Welcome back. We turn to San Francisco, California, with reporting about Stockton, California, which just last night filed for the country's largest municipal bankruptcy ever. With more details is Bobby White in San Francisco. Bobby, thanks for joining us. So Stockton, again, anticipated that it was going to file for bankruptcy, but still a big deal that it did. Largest municipal bankruptcy in the country's history. What kind of cuts are city officials going to have to make to get out of this bankruptcy?
Well, what they fear is having to make cuts to retirement, basically pension plans. So what they're going to put on the line is basically healthcare cuts. Bondholders may take a haircut, but mainly healthcare costs for retirees have kind of soared, and so they're going to make some cuts a lot to healthcare for retirees. They've already slashed salaries. They've severely slashed services. Police are down, fire department is down. So there are very few areas that they can make cuts. And that's why they had to come to the table and try to make deals with their creditors.
Now, Bobby, municipal bankruptcies, as we know, are very, very rare. This one had been kind of, boiling over for a long time. What I'm sure in California, where there are, high pension costs, high healthcare costs, cities are, there's cities that are in trouble there. Where are people focusing now? What other cities are they looking at and saying, could this be, the next Stockton? If not the same size, but maybe, another city that's moving potentially towards bankruptcy.
There are a handful of cities in California that are kind of clinging to solvency, as a municipal finance expert put it to me. One city, Hercules, which has already basically defaulted on some of its bonds. It was able to go into a mediation period with some of its creditors to kind of rejigger some of that debt. But there is a large debt payment coming up to the next fiscal year. There's another smaller city, Lincoln, California, that's also facing some difficulties and will eventually may have to come to the table with its creditors. The good thing about California is there's a period where you can sit down with your creditors before you file bankruptcy and try to come to some type of agreement. Now, Stockton also went through this process, but unfortunately they were not able to reach settlement agreements with all of its creditors. But there are a number of cities that are kind of facing difficult times and may have to come to the table and talk to their creditors.
And here we've got a gorgeous picture of downtown Stockton. We can see part of the downtown revitalization there, which actually the cost for that downtown revitalization, right, Bobby, were part of what drove Stockton to bankruptcy.
Yes. The city had decided to improve its image, bought a building for new city hall, new parking garages, new parks, new even theaters for downtown area. But in order to do that, they had to issue bonds. They had to take on debt. Unfortunately, they took on a massive amount of debt. And one way to pay back that debt was through property taxes. Unfortunately, Stockton's property taxes plummeted with the downfall of the real estate values. Right. And so the city attempted to improve itself, but unfortunately dug itself into a deeper hole.
And what's going to be interesting, you mentioned its creditors and pension costs. One of those creditors is obviously CalPERS, right, the giant California pension fund. And because municipal bankruptcies are so rare, it's never quite clear exactly how things are going to play out. And I know that Vallejo, another California city, they had trouble, basically trying to short shrift CalPERS of any of the funds they owed, because CalPERS is in a tricky position here, right? If they, for example, if they allow Stockton not to pay what they're owed, then there's going to be a ton of other cities, you would imagine, lining up and saying, wait, if they're not going to have to pay what they owe, why do we have to pay what we owe?
Absolutely. With Vallejo, CalPERS was able to convince Vallejo to not touch pensions. Right. Now, with Stockton, it may be a different situation, because one of the things I noticed with Stockton filing for bankruptcy, it listed CalPERS retirees as unsecured creditors. Now, that's a different category for bankruptcy, because the first guys you sit down with are your secured creditors.
Right.
Now, putting CalPERS in unsecured creditor area, that is a kind of a political issue, because what I know about Stockton is that the city manager believes that this is a state issue. Pension plans are a state issue, not a local issue. So down the road, this could be a political issue for California as far as how Stockton deals with its retiree pension costs.